I can promise you that you would have heard me at some point in your life. Communication skills is a lot to do with it too. How you read a room, how you communicate with people of different levels. Having done both training for organizations as well as one-to-one coaching, I seem to gravitate towards working with people one-on-one. I find that more satisfying because then you...
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. And as I was telling today's guest, it is a podcast to feature business leaders across Asia. And the term business leader is someone who impacts business, is what I mean. So today I am very honored and also nervous because we have a voice and speech coach today. So I met this person actually at a lunch. And then I said, hey, you're very interesting. And before I met her for lunch, I actually been following her content for years and we've connected for LinkedIn for years. But when I met her for lunch, I said, hey, I also do this podcasting and would you like to come on? And as of, I think just less than 1 month, and now we are here. So we have the principal voice consultant and voiceover artist at Wikipedia. And her name is Kuti, and I hope I say her last name right, Kuti Biazid. And fun fact, it is actually, Biazid is Turkish origin. And Kuti, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you for having me. And yes, you said it perfectly. Just to, for the record, I'm not Turkish. The name itself is of Turkish origin.
Yes, thank you for coming on. Yes, Turkish origin, that's very interesting indeed. And actually there is one question that I ask all my guests, which I forgot to mention to you, that I ask all my guests, because it is called the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon podcast. My first question is, what is your favorite Kung Fu movie, if you have one?
I can't say that I have a favorite Kung Fu movie, but I have seen movies with Kung Fu in it. But I remember when I was a teenager, there was a series of documentary that my brother used to watch. It's called Way of the Warrior, and it features the different types of martial arts. And I found that really fascinating. They featured Kung Fu, Karate, Judo, Aikido. That one I enjoyed watching because it was the fundamentals of the martial arts. But movie-wise, Kung Fu Panda, does that count?
It counts indeed. And fun fact, it is the most mentioned Kung Fu movie on the pod. So right now we are over 80 episodes, and I would say about 60% of them say Kung Fu Panda.
I think I remember when I was a kid, there was a show called, with David Carradine. I think it was called Kung Fu. I'm not sure. Do you know it?
I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
Yeah.
I'll look it up.
Yeah.
So David Carradine.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. He's obviously not Asian, but the series was all about Kung Fu. I think it was called Kung Fu, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll look it up. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
The reason why I love bringing up Kung Fu movies, you mentioned Kung Fu Panda. When it comes to Kung Fu movies, there's a lot of values in it. There's a lot of lessons and values in these Kung Fu movies. And I think today I really want to learn a lot about voice and a lot of speech. And I follow you on LinkedIn. You have a lot of content out there that talks about charisma, that talks about voice. And there's one that you recorded in the car, and then that was so interesting. It was a very recent video, and you had different tones. And I was like, wow, so interesting, this one. So maybe my first question to you is, how did you end up being a voice expert today?
Okay, yes, that's a question that a lot of people ask. First of all, how did I become a voiceover artist? So there's voiceover work, and then there's the coaching part of it, which quite similar in nature, but yet quite different as well. Because as a voiceover artist, companies hire me to voice over their brand, their products, their services over a piece of audio film, right? So they only use my voice over that job. But as a coach, I help people find their voice. You know what I mean? So I started doing voiceovers quite a long time ago. I would say about 3 decades ago, 30 years ago, I started my first voiceover when I was in advertising. Yes, it was actually my side income. It was my side gig, because to explain further, I actually started as then Datuk Lim Kok Wing's secretary. Okay, Datuk Lim Kok Wing, he's passed away obviously, but he was the CEO of this advertising agency that I was working in, Wings BBDO. Okay, that's where I first started. After some time, they kind of promoted me to get into account servicing. So I became an AE, an account executive at Wings BBDO. And it was there that I was first introduced to the world of production, film, audio, and I decided to audition myself at a studio called Ad Audio in Section 17. It was owned by Patrick Teo. I did my first audition there, and 2 weeks later I got my first job, and I have not stopped doing voiceovers since then until now. So that's how my voiceover work started. The voice coaching bit started not too long ago, less than 10 years ago. It began, I would say, as a result of a moment of adversity when my late husband, passed away. So I knew that, because voiceovers became my full-time work for 30 years, right? But when he passed away, I knew that I couldn't just rely on voiceover work. So I had to do more. So it was suggested that I be trained to coach people on how to use my voice. So I got myself trained, I got myself certified, joined a lot of courses. I did a lot of things during that period to educate myself. I did NLP, I got myself certified as a TESOL teacher, teaching English of second language. And basically I got myself educated to coach people on how to use the voice to improve themselves at work.
Wow, thank you for sharing. I also, fun fact, started my career in advertising.
Oh, okay.
And I exactly know it. Later, you started at Wings BBDO, and then it became BBDO, and it's no longer here. I used to work at a company called Saatchi & Saatchi, which is, like the traditional advertising agencies. And I exactly know what you mean when you're an AE. I was an AE too.
Okay.
I was an account executive too in the servicing department. And great, thank you for sharing that story. And I think my question to that is, have you been featured in any work or any advertisements or any movies that we would know of as a voice artist?
I have been featured. I've done more than 10,000 commercials.
Wow.
So I'm not sure how old you are, but I can
assume I'm very old.
I can promise you that you would have heard me at some point in your life, either on radio, TV, cinema, online tutorials, on the phone for IVRs, even on the plane. I've done the Malaysia Airlines safety video. Was my voice for, I think, more than 10 years.
Okay, definitely I've heard that.
Yes, it's been changed recently, obviously, but the previous round of safety video was done by me. A lot of corporations use my voice in their on-hold messaging when you're calling up to, do your banking and things like that. I've been doing a lot of work for McDonald's, Pantene over the years, Maybelline. It's just too many to mention.
Wow. I think, yes, if for the listeners, if you so like a lot of my listeners are also people from LinkedIn, and I think they have encountered your voice somehow. And I think you sort of like embody like the voice of Malaysia. And meeting you in person, I can advocate for this. Like, you sound very nice. Like, you have that tone and that pleasantness and gentleness.
Thank you.
About your voice. And maybe like what do you, as a voice coach, like what type of companies do you help? Do you do trainings, or do you work with companies? Which companies are you helping so far?
I like to focus on working with individuals. Having done both training for organizations as well as one-to-one coaching, I seem to gravitate towards working with people one-on-one. I find that more satisfying because then you can really focus on their issues, because I believe everyone is different. They all have different issues. So there is no cookie cutter way of dealing with each person. But when I do training for companies, it's more of an overview of how to use their voice for work purposes, presentations, how to project and things like that. It's a lot more than that. It's public speaking for work purposes, really, when I do work for organizations. But when it comes to working one-on-one, they all have their own objectives. They all have their own goals, and everyone have different positions and different things that they want to go for. Somebody might want to start a YouTube channel. Another person has an important presentation to give. Someone else has a competition to enter. So everyone has different mission. And that's why they come to see me. So I like to get deep into what they want at the end of the day when I coach them.
Hey everyone, producer Elton here. We share stories from business leaders in Asia, and if this video brought you any value, hit the subscribe button down below, like and share with your friends. Thank you.
I see. Wow. Okay, so let's get into the details here. So on your LinkedIn as well, you say something, you have this thing called the triple I method. And maybe can you share to us more about it as well?
Okay. See, when I run a workshop or when I do a coaching with someone, I've actually coined an acronym, VOICE, which coincidentally spells out voice, which essentially is the fundamentals of voice work. How you breathe, how you use your organs of articulation, how you intonate, how you speak with clarity and use expression. And so the triple I method is the framework that I use in order to coach my clients. So first I identify what their issues are, first and foremost. I need to know what their issues are, because you might have, say, issues speaking too fast, but another person will have different issues. So I try and identify their issues first. And then I will implement the voice work elements that I mentioned earlier. And then after that, we try and get inspired going into what their goals are and work towards that. That's essentially, in a simplistic way, that's what the triple I method is. It's my framework that I use to run my coaching sessions.
Thanks for sharing. And the reason why I got you on the pod as well, so I'm a bit selfish. So it's because this is also something I'm working on.
Okay.
That's why I follow your content. You know, I love that video. You were in the car and you said, okay, this is the different tones. I'm like, oh, that's so mind blowing. So like, okay, let's do a live thing. So like, you've watched some of my episodes and you've talked to me today. Like, if you were to work with me, like, what are some of the areas you would work on?
Okay, well, in the last 5 minutes,
Yeah.
I think I would like to see you be more expressive, perhaps.
Oh, okay.
It'd be interesting to see that side of you.
Okay.
And I think I also watched an episode where you mentioned that you were taking singing lessons.
Yes.
So I would love to hear what you've learned from there and how you've applied it yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the listeners, I take weekly singing lessons.
That's amazing. I
go
love that.
for vocal lessons, but in the singing part of things. And one of the things that I am learning as a singer is I sing very loudly. And I'm trying to, I think last year I learned to sing softly and listen to myself so that I can sing better in pitch.
Yeah.
Yesterday I learned a song from Taylor Swift yesterday.
Okay, which one?
So every Wednesday I go to Cheras to learn from my teacher in Cheras, and so happened I also joined another group program last week, which we did Taylor Swift's Blank Space.
Okay.
All right. So the previous week we learned Coldplay's Yellow. So all of the listeners will know Coldplay's Yellow. So Coldplay's Yellow is a very melodic song.
Yeah.
It's a very melodic. So when it comes to the Blank Space, I'm not sure. Do you know Blank Space?
Start it for me.
so I would sing. I would not Fuad, but anyway. So Fuad, our previous guest sang on the podcast, but it's like the first verse is nice to meet you, where you, nice to meet you. So it's a very rhythmic song.
Yes.
So I don't remember exactly the lyrics, but so what I learned yesterday was to be more. Depends on the song. So some songs you need to punch.
Yes.
Some songs you need to punch in certain words. Some songs like Yellow, you need to be more melodic.
Yes.
And you can't sing the same songs same way for all the songs.
Correct.
So that's what I learned.
Blank Space is a bit more staccato like that,
Yes,
right?
it is more rhythmic in many ways. A lot of rhythms and sometimes rap also.
Ooh,
So-
I'd love to learn to rap.
Yeah, so maybe after this I'll play it for you. But it is that is my challenge as a singer. Is biggest challenge is rhythm.
That
In
sounds
certain
fun.
songs.
Maybe I'll join
yeah,
you
so
one
that's
day.
what I learned. That's what I learned. So like besides the you said, be more expressive, which I admit is something I'm working on. I am very chill in
Yeah.
many ways and very bland, I would say. But any one of my questions to you also is like, I have a very typical Malaysian accent also, and is that something they also help people with?
Only if they ask for it. Because I don't really see someone with a Malaysian accent as a kind of impediment. I actually love our Malaysian accent. It's what bonds us, It's what connects us all. But actually, accent versus slang, they're quite different things, yeah? Slang is our lingo, jom kita pergi shoru, let's tapau, lepak together. Those are words that only we as Malaysians understand. That's Manglish lah, right? But accent is actually the melody in which we say things. So if you're referring to accent, some people do say, "Oh, I want to reduce my local accent." So I suppose I would ask why, first of all. How has it impacted you negatively that you want to reduce it? Because if it's not detrimental to your line of work, then you should embrace it and perhaps work on other areas that could positively impact you at the workplace. But they may have certain reasons why, and usually it's because they interact a lot with international counterparts, and they feel that they need to upskill themselves in that way to improve their articulation. And so with that, I will say, okay, there are certain things that you can do to improve the way you speak in terms of pronunciation, elocution, right? Then we'll have to work on phonetics and things like that.
Like, what is the biggest challenge for typical Malaysians? Is it a specific alphabet, specific word that we need to work on for?
I think for Malaysians, Asians specifically, it's the fricative TH. Fricative TH is so words like the,
Okay.
three, brother, mother, otherwise usually people say mother, brother, father, right? Or can I have 3, I'm thirsty, can I have 3 Cokes? So the fricative TH is something that I frequently hear people mispronounce. But it's, like I said, it's negligible and it's okay. We've been speaking that way all this while and everything's fine. It's not going to get you into trouble. But as a voiceover artist, it is absolutely imperative for me to pronounce words correctly because that's what they pay me to do. So I need to be able to speak fluently and in the most professional way, the correct way. But as, if you're just doing it to improve yourself for work, you can work on it for your own personal development. But I'd say don't stress about trying to sound like the queen, and speak perfect English. It's okay. It's okay to have an accent as long as you're clearly understood, as long as it doesn't cause a distraction to your listener, or as long as it doesn't dilute the message that you're trying to give. I'd say it's okay.
This reminds me of my time in advertising. So when I was in AE, you'll sit in a lot of report meetings, in progress meetings, and I used to work with a lot of colleagues who came back studying overseas, and they would have like this sort of like American accent, and I used to be envious of the sort of like the Asian American accent,
Yeah.
and it sort of captures more attention. And maybe if it's not the accent, what do you work on? Do you work on their pronunciation, or what do you work on if it's not the accent?
Okay. For a person to develop an accent, they would have to have been immersed in a particular environment for a long period of time, because the way we speak is the result of our influences, our environmental influences, the people that we hang out with, the people that we spend the most time with. And that's usually the reason why they have developed a certain accent after spending a lot of time abroad. I mean, I know I have an accent too, because I did grow up in London when I was young. But after I've come back to Malaysia, I know that the accent has watered down because I have immersed myself in our local culture. But the thing is, I can be fluid. I can switch it on or off at will. It really depends on who I am with at the time, right? If I am in a professional situation, then or I find myself speaking professionally when I'm thinking hard, right? But if I'm at the market, I'm buying groceries or ordering food from a mama shop, I'm not going to be speaking like this, right? I will just be myself, or adapt. So being adaptable is important. Sorry, what was your question again?
Okay, if it's not for accents, and let's say I'm an AE,
Right.
and I have to do my advertising presentations,
Yeah.
what would you work on if I'm an AE and I have to do presentations to the team? And when I was working with Sachi and Sachi, there is this is the old days of advertising. I
Yeah.
used to be working with teams like the creative director
Yes.
is a Westerner, he is from the UK, things like that. So, of course, like being in that room is quite intimidating.
Yeah.
And how would you work with someone besides the accent if he had to do presentations regularly?
Okay, that's a really good question, and I've been there. I can tell you that back then, when I was in advertising, it might surprise you to know that I was extremely shy and quite an introvert. And I was terrible at presentations then. And I was always intimidated, not just by speaking in front of my clients, but even to my colleagues. Because, as an AE, we need to we need to address all the departments, traffic lah, production lah, your writers and all that. It was, like you said, it was intimidating. So I would ask, first of all, who are you talking to? Are you having a WIP internally, or are you part of the pitch process to your potential clients? First and foremost, I think preparation is key for anyone in any kind of presentation scenario, right? If you're going to have a meeting internally, what is your role? What you bring to the table? So you do need to prepare that. Is it about budgets? Is it a brief on a new campaign? Clarity is key, not just the clarity in your speech, but clarity in your thoughts. So there has to be a kind of structure to where you're going to take this meeting. What do you hope to achieve from your part? Is it to get approval from the creative team, or is it to get them to produce a set of storyboards by a particular time? So you have to have your the end game in mind and work backwards and make sure that your mission is clear when you're there at the meeting. So I would say clarity is important. So by not just clarity in speech, but clarity in thought. So clarity in speech, I would say don't speak too fast. That's one of the key things that I would propose or recommend someone do if you're new in the whole, speaking situation.
Yeah, I think I remember when I was in AE, I would speak fast because I was anxious, right? Because you are aware and you are scared of that silence.
Yes.
And you try to compensate by, presenting faster and trying to, speak in a very monotonous way as well.
Yeah. Because you're trying to finish quickly, right?
Yes, you're like, are they judging me? And being an AE last time, the communication is the most important thing. Like you said, communicating with all the parties.
Yes.
From the your own peers to the client. It is the main thing.
That's right.
And so the next question I have is, of course, on voice tones. So you mentioned, I referenced that video you did in your car.
Okay.
So when it comes to tones as well, we mentioned, being in a meeting and speaking slower instead of speaking very fast. I think that is the most basic thing that people can start doing. And what about voice? What are the main things that you work on when it comes to voice tones?
Okay, I love that question. Voice tone is the heart of conversation, I would say. And it starts with intention for me. Your intention behind your message. What do you want your listener to understand or feel from your tone? So the video that you were referring to, I think I know which one. Was it to do with, so how was your holiday?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I did it in 4 different tones. 4 different tones. Along with those 4 tones, I deliberately showed different facial gestures because along with the tone of your voice, the facial gestures that you produce will sort of support your voice tone. And it can influence the way you sound and the intention that you're trying to give, the message you're trying to give your listeners. Okay. There's also another video I did on LinkedIn, which you can look for. I was speaking Italian. You can find it. I was basically reading out a menu to an Italian restaurant.
Yeah, so we are at an Italian restaurant today. Okay, so
Yes.
for the listeners, we made a joke before we started recording, and today's setup is Italian restaurant-esque.
Yes.
So I'm reading the menu right now, so the digital menu. So what happened in the video?
Yeah, so I was reading out food options from a menu, an Italian menu. I was speaking in Italian, and I deliberately used a very, I suppose, sensual tone. Okay, I deliberately did that because I wanted people to think that I was saying something really romantic. Because the Italian language is like that, right? It just sounds so beautiful if it's said in a particular way. But actually, I was dishing out words from the menu. I was talking about asparagus and steak and mushrooms and things like that. But when you don't understand what I was saying, but the tone itself sounded so fluid and beautiful, you would think or assume that I was saying something wonderful and and suggestive, but actually, no, I wasn't. So you see how the tone of your voice can impact the way someone perceives what you want to share. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of my challenges, so I've been doing this podcast that I mentioned to you, over 80 episodes, and Elton, who is here, helps me to edit. So a lot of times he'll say, Bob, please check the video. I'm like, so I have to watch and listen to my own voice. I'm like, oh no, I've been mumbling, or my biggest challenge doing a podcast is coming up with questions, thinking and speaking at the same time in recording. Like, do you have any ways you go about that? Like, if in the setting like this, and a lot of times I have to come up with a question after your answer, and that sometimes I mumble when I talk about it. Do you have a way of going around that?
I don't hear you mumbling right now.
Okay.
So you're asking how to sort of ask the next question, or?
Yeah, like I think, okay, maybe let's dial back a bit. Do you I struggle watching myself.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't really enjoy watching my own podcast.
Oh, trust me, I also don't, okay?
But-
I'm gonna cringe after I watch this video. I always do. And you know, most of the time I'll be focusing on things that really doesn't matter. I'll be like, oh my God, look at my double chin. Or, oh my God, I should have done my makeup differently. Or, oh, why did I, sit like that? That's what I'll be most concerned about when I watch back.
Same here.
Is that crazy?
So, yeah. And what do you look for? Do you analyze the tones, like you said, or do you look for what do you look for to improve? What do you see when you watch your own recordings?
Okay, yes. Funnily enough, if it is a video recording, like I said, I will stress myself out over the visual aspects of things.
Me too. I watched
just
the previous
ridiculous. I think it's because I'm in the voiceover line. I don't sort of think so much about how I sound because I hear myself all the time in a recording, right? In a recording studio. But I will stress on how I look. But that's me, and you shouldn't think that way because watching yourself back on recording is one of the best ways to improve yourself in terms of improving how you speak and sound, right? So what you should look for is what are the physical gestures or habits that you display when you watch yourself back, right? Do you habitually do a certain movement, for example, or do you find yourself, let's say, leaning on one side or tilting your head or tapping your fingers? Even in a standing situation, right? Do you sway your body when you're speaking? So look out for your stance, okay, and your head carriage. In terms of vocal delivery, I suppose you should listen out for, again, habitual sounds. Are you constantly using crutch words, or do you think too hard when you're answering? What are you concerned about? You know what I mean? There are many things actually to look out for when you're looking back at yourself, but most of the time people just don't want to get there because they just cringe, and I get it. I do too. It's quite normal, so don't worry about it.
Yes, I look for the crutch words. Crutch words, and one of my crutch words is "thank you for sharing." Every time someone answers, I'll say "thank you for sharing," but I try to replace it with different words.
Yeah.
Like that's interesting. That's a good point. That is, I'll try to mix it up a bit,
Yeah.
but I'm very conscious about that, saying "thank
Yes.
you for sharing." But
Yeah.
that unfortunately is the way to say.
It's become a habit now.
Yes, it's a habit, but I try to mix it up a bit. But every interview, I do say that.
Okay, I'm going to listen out for that.
So maybe let's take it up to the next level. You talk about voice, we talk about how you evaluate yourself when you watch the video, and also intonations. So maybe the next one, and this one also caught my attention in your LinkedIn post. In your upcoming workshop, it is about charisma and confidence.
Okay.
So I think is it like a byproduct of speaking well, charisma and confidence?
Okay. It's because it's a question that a lot of people ask me when they come to see me, right? How do I exude charisma? How can I develop my confidence? So that was why I wanted to focus on those two things specifically, because that seems to be a question that a lot of people ask. And the video that I did, it was based on a study done by, I can't remember her name now, Dr. Susan Fisk of Princeton University. So she did a study on how people judge each other, right? So for you to exude charisma and confidence, obviously you have to give out those signals to people. So the study showed that the two most important traits for someone with charisma are warmth and competence. Yes. So warmth and competence, how you need to have a balance of being warm and showing competence. There has to be a balance because a lot of people have an imbalance. So they might show too much warmth but too little competence, or too much competence and too little warmth, or no competence and no warmth. So you have to have the right balance of both warmth and competence for you to be perceived as someone with charisma. And it's also important to note, what does charisma actually mean? For me, it means someone who we like to be with, someone who we feel is dependable, reliable, and has that certain sense of confidence that we want to be around them. Even at the workplace, right? Someone that we kind of trust and have the belief that everything will be okay with this person steering the ship, for example. So that's in a leadership sense, that's what charisma and confidence means to me.
What do you mean by warmth? Is it being enigmatic, or is it being more? Is it smiling? What is warm?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Correct. Smiling is one of the things, right? When you greet someone, you've met people who do not show any warmth, and then they shake your hands and then they go off. Sometimes they even hardly touch your hand, and then that's kind of aloof already. So going back to what I said just now about having a balance, if you're overly smiley, that's an imbalance of being too warm, for example. If you're too animated, it's an imbalance. So there has to be a right balance of being warm. To smile, to look, to intently listen is showing warmth, correct? So that the person you're talking to can feel as if you're the only person that I'm paying attention to right now. That's an example of warmth, right? So there are many aspects to being warm. Tone of voice is one of them, using it at the right time. And at the same time, the competence factor has to come in, when and how to be assertive. Again, balance of warmth and competence.
Someone can be too assertive a lot of times in the business setting, and not so warm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. So you mix both together, and you get that charisma and confidence.
Yes, and of course there are other elements too. Probably a dash of humor, and communication skills is a lot to do with it too. How you read a room, how you communicate with people of different levels. If you show that you cannot speak to, the guy on the street, but you can only speak to the higher ups, then there's this sense that you are not adaptable, right? There's the warmth factor there.
That is very insightful. And the reason why I say that is because I struggle with that. I'm very competent.
Okay.
I'm very business centric. So we know each other from LinkedIn. So a lot of my people I know are from LinkedIn and business people. And I tend to be very competent most of the time, and less warm in many ways, and very logical and analytical all the time, and less warm. But now I see the importance of having both, being assertive, competent, but being warm as well, and maybe taking it to the next level, being humorous, being a bit animated and things like that.
Yeah, because you don't want to be with someone cold all the time, right? As well. I mean, in a workplace, I guess it's quite normal, but it's nice to know that you can be warm as well.
Yes, I learned so much today, from intonation to the words, so I say thirsty. So the words we can improve on, and I learned that I need to be maybe a bit more expressive in things. So I learned so much today, but I'd like to end with this question. I know that you have a charisma and confidence workshop coming up, and maybe what's next for you up in the year?
I have a few invitations to run talks. That's in the pipeline. A couple of voiceover workshops due in the later half of the year. It's something that I do once a year, but this time it's probably in collaboration with Voice Guild Malaysia, for which I am an EXCO member, and I have been a member of the Voice Guild Malaysia since it was founded in year 2000. So yeah, there's quite a number of things happening this year.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Yes, and so yeah, before we wrap up, Kuti actually came in and asked me, hey, how much do I pay to rent? So we're actually in a training room here. So I have to mention our venue sponsor, Iconic Co-working. So if you want to get in touch.
Italian restaurant.
Yes, come to Italian restaurant. You can do your Italian restaurant pop-ups here, I imagine. And if you want to do training, then we are actually in the training room. You can do events. A lot of our friends are in Iconic Co-working. We have Maverick, who is actually just next door. And then we have a few of friends downstairs as well. So it's a great place, great community. You can run your events. You can work here. And you can also, come here and make friends as well.
Yeah.
So I'd like to thank Iconic Co-working. And thanks again, Kuti, for sharing. And I hope to learn more from you as well. And most importantly, this is how I learned. Please follow Kuti on LinkedIn, right? So please follow. And she does her videos, she does a lot of sharings, and join her workshops as well. There's so much to learn from her.
Thank you so much, Bob, for having me today. It's been a pleasure. And I wish you all the best in your podcast journey.
Thank you.